The Awakening Storm. Dr. Elena Vasquez was enjoying her morning coffee aboard the orbital research station when the universe changed forever. The steam from her cup caught the artificial sunlight streaming through the station's massive windows, creating tiny rainbows in the air. She had always found peace in these quiet moments, watching Earth turn slowly beneath her, but today would be different. The emergency alert pierced through the station's calm atmosphere like a knife. Red lights bathed the research facility as Elena's communication console erupted with incoming messages. She set down her coffee with steady hands and walked to her station, her movements deliberate and unhurried despite the chaos surrounding her. Multiple colonies under attack, reported Lieutenant Torres from the military wing. His voice carried the tension that Elena somehow didn't feel. The Krethek Empire has broken the 3,000-year peace treaty. They're hitting our outer settlements simultaneously. Elena nodded slowly, her fingers dancing across the console with practiced efficiency. Around her, other researchers and staff members were responding to the crisis, but something was strange about their behavior. Instead of panic, there was a calm organization that seemed almost rehearsed, though none of them had ever drilled for such an event. "How many colonies?" Elena asked, her voice steady. 17 so far, with more attacks expected. The Krethak are using their full battle fleet. They're not just raiding, they're trying to wipe us out. Elena studied the data streaming across her screens. The Krethak were a proud warrior species, standing nearly 8 feet tall with crystalline armor that grew from their skin. They had been humanity's neighbors for millennia, respecting the ancient peace that had kept the galaxy stable. Their sudden aggression made no sense. "Have they given any reason for the attacks?" Elena asked. "They claim humans have grown too soft, too weak. They say we've forgotten our place in the galaxy and need to be reminded." Elena smiled. It was a small expression, barely visible, but everyone who saw it felt a strange chill. Around the station, other humans were displaying the same mysterious smile, as if they all shared a secret that was just beginning to surface. Captain Marcus Chen received the evacuation orders while his ship, the Harmony, was conducting routine patrol near the Centauri system. The message was brief and urgent. "Krethak attacks imminent. Evacuate New Geneva immediately." Marcus had served in the Colonial Defense Force for 20 years, but he had never seen actual combat. The galaxy had been at peace for 3 millennia, and his role had been more about rescue operations and humanitarian aid than warfare. Yet, as he read the evacuation order, something deep in his mind seemed to click into place. "All hands to emergency stations," Marcus announced over the ship's communication system. "We have a colonial evacuation to conduct." The crew of the Harmony moved with surprising efficiency. Engineers who had spent years maintaining peaceful exploration equipment began converting systems for emergency operations. Navigation officers plotted evacuation routes with the precision of military strategists. Even the ship's cook started preparing emergency rations, as if he had done it 1,000 times before. "Captain," reported his first officer, Commander Sarah Park, "we're receiving evacuation requests from 12 colonies simultaneously. The logistics alone should take hours to coordinate." Marcus looked at the tactical display, seeing the positions of civilian ships, evacuation points, and incoming Krethak forces. Without conscious thought, he began issuing orders that would organize the most complex rescue operation in recent history. The strange thing was, he had never learned how to do this. The knowledge seemed to come from somewhere deeper than training. "Signal all civilian vessels to form convoy formation Delta 7, Marcus ordered. "Assign escort priorities based on passenger capacity and medical needs. Begin systematic evacuation of all outer colonies, working inward." "Sir," Commander Park said quietly, "there is no Delta 7 formation in our current tactical manual." Marcus paused, realizing she was right. He had given an order for a formation that didn't officially exist, yet somehow every ship in the area was moving into exactly the right position. The civilian captains, merchants, and explorers were following complex military maneuvers that none of them had ever learned. "Continue the evacuation," Marcus said simply, and his crew nodded as if everything was perfectly normal. President Sarah Mitchell was in her garden when the emergency council meeting was called. She had been tending to her roses, finding peace in the simple act of nurturing life, when her security detail informed her of the crisis. The Krethek Empire had declared war on humanity, and 17 colonies were already burning. The emergency council gathered in the Situation Room beneath the Capitol building. Military advisors, diplomatic staff, and civilian leaders filled the room with urgent voices and worried faces. They wanted immediate mobilization, declaration of war, and a response that would show the galaxy that humanity was not weak. Sarah listened to all their arguments with perfect calm, occasionally nodding or asking a simple question. When the room finally fell silent, waiting for her decision, she spoke with a voice that carried absolute certainty. "We will not declare war," she announced. "Instead, we will invite the Krethak leadership to a diplomatic summit. We'll offer them a chance to explain their actions and find a peaceful resolution." The room erupted in protests. General Martinez, the head of colonial defense, stood up with his fists clenched. "Madam President, they're murdering our colonists. We need to respond with force." Sarah turned to him with that same mysterious smile that was appearing on human faces across the galaxy. "General, have you noticed anything unusual about the evacuation reports?" General Martinez frowned and checked his datapad. "The casualties are lower than expected, much lower. It's as if the colonists knew the attacks were coming." "Interesting," Sarah said. "And our response times? Also unprecedented. Ships are coordinating without central command. Civilians are organizing like trained military units. It's like they're all following some protocol that doesn't exist." Sarah's smile widened slightly. "Perhaps it does exist. Perhaps we've simply forgotten that we chose not to use it." Dr. James Park was deep in the archaeological archives when the war began. He had spent his career studying the period before the Great Peace, trying to understand why humanity had suddenly become so peaceful 3,000 years ago. The official record spoke of a great awakening that had led to humanity's transformation, but the details were always vague. When the emergency alerts began flooding the archive's communication systems, James felt a strange compulsion to look deeper into the oldest files. His security clearance granted him access to documents that had been sealed for millennia, and what he found made his hands tremble. The files were labeled Compassion Protocol and Silent War Archives. As James read, he began to understand that the Great Peace hadn't been a spiritual awakening at all. It had been a choice made after humanity had proven itself capable of something so terrible that even they had been horrified by their own actions. According to the sealed records, humanity had once been the galaxy's most feared species. They had fought a war against an enemy called the Devourers, and they had won so completely, so efficiently, that they had scared themselves. The victory had lasted 72 hours and had resulted in the complete extinction of their enemies. After that victory, humanity had made a collective decision. They would lock away their weapons, their tactics, and their very nature as warriors. They would choose to be peaceful, not because they were weak, but because they were too strong. The Compassion Protocol was their way of ensuring they would never again unleash their full potential on the galaxy. James continued reading and found references to automatic systems that would activate if humanity was ever truly threatened. Defense mechanisms that would trigger not when humans were attacked, but when they were in danger of being completely destroyed. The files suggested that these systems had been activated only once in the past 3,000 years, and that had been enough to maintain the peace. As James read the final entries, he realized that the smile appearing on human faces across the galaxy wasn't a sign of weakness or naivety. It was a sign of recognition. Humanity was remembering something they had chosen to forget, and the galaxy was about to learn why the peace had lasted so long. The Krethek Empire's greatest achievement was their unity. Unlike humans, who valued individuality and personal choice, the Krethak thought and acted as one. When their Supreme Council decided that humanity had grown too weak to deserve their colonies, every Krethak warrior shared that conviction. Ambassador Zektar commanded the flagship of the Krethak fleet, a massive vessel that could destroy entire cities with a single shot. He had studied human behavior for decades, and he was certain that the attacks would cause immediate panic and surrender. Humans were traitors, explorers, and dreamers. They had not fought a real war in 3 millennia. The first surprise came when the human colonies began evacuating before the Krethak fleet arrived. Somehow, the humans had known about the attacks hours in advance. The second surprise was the efficiency of their evacuation. Instead of chaos and panic, Zektar observed perfectly coordinated movements that suggested military training. How are they doing this? Zektar asked his tactical officer. Unknown, Supreme Commander. Their civilian ships are moving in formation patterns that require extensive training to execute. Their rescue operations are proceeding faster than our computer models predicted was possible. Zektar watched as human ships moved through space with the precision of a military fleet, despite being operated by merchants, farmers, and families. There was something deeply unsettling about their calm efficiency. And their military response. That is even more puzzling. Supreme Commander, they have made no aggressive moves toward our forces. Their defensive actions are minimal, yet their evacuation success rate is near 100%. Zektar felt a growing unease. The Krethak had expected fear, anger, or at least confusion from the humans. Instead, they were displaying a calm competence that made no sense for a peaceful species. The third surprise came when President Sarah Mitchell's message reached the Krethak fleet. Instead of a declaration of war or a plea for mercy, she had sent a formal invitation to a diplomatic summit. The message was polite, professional, and completely inappropriate for a species under attack. "She's asking us to dinner," Zektar said in disbelief. "Their colonies are burning, and she's asking us to dinner." "Supreme Commander," his communications officer said quietly, "there's something else. The human president is smiling in the message." Zektar watched the message again, and he saw what his officer meant. Sarah Mitchell's smile was not the expression of a weak leader trying to appease a stronger enemy. It was the smile of someone who knew something that others didn't. It was the smile of someone who was completely confident in their position. For the first time since the attacks began, Zektar wondered if the Krethak had made a terrible mistake. The memory unleashed. Dr. James Park's hands were shaking as he accessed the deepest archives of human history. The Compassion Protocol files revealed truths that had been hidden for 3 millennia, and each new document made the current situation more terrifying and more clear. The Silent War had lasted exactly 72 hours. According to the sealed records, humanity had faced an enemy called the Devourers, a species that consumed entire civilizations for sustenance. The Devourers had been confident in their victory, having destroyed dozens of species across the galaxy. They had expected humanity to be just another meal. They had been wrong. The files described weapons that could disintegrate matter at the molecular level, strategies that anticipated enemy movements days in advance, and a coordination between human forces that bordered on telepathic. The war had ended not with humanity's victory, but with the complete and utter extinction of the Devourer species. Every single member of their race had been eliminated in less than 3 days. James found a personal log from Admiral Rebecca Chen, who had commanded the human forces during the Silent War. Her final entry was dated exactly 3,000 years ago. "We won. God help us, we won too well. The Devourers are gone, not just defeated but extinct. Every planet they controlled, every ship they built, every trace of their existence has been removed from the galaxy. We were thorough. We were efficient. We were perfect. And we were monsters. The Council has made a decision. We will lock away everything we used to win this war. Our weapons, our tactics, our very nature as warriors. We will choose to be peaceful, not because we are weak, but because we are too strong. The galaxy will be safer if we forget what we are capable of." The Compassion Protocol will ensure that we never again unleash our full potential unless our entire species faces extinction. We pray that day never comes. James sat back in his chair, understanding finally why the peace had lasted so long. Every species in the galaxy had known about the Silent War. They had seen what humanity could do when truly threatened. The peace treaty hadn't been a gesture of goodwill. It had been a promise from the galaxy's most dangerous predator to remain dormant. Captain Marcus Chen was coordinating the evacuation of the Tau Ceti system when he realized that something fundamental had changed within him. The knowledge he was using to organize the rescue operations wasn't coming from his training or experience. It was surfacing from somewhere deeper, as if a part of his mind that had been sleeping for his entire life was finally awakening. "Captain," Commander Park reported, "we've successfully evacuated all 17 attacked colonies. 0 casualties." Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on the tactical display. The Krethek fleet was regrouping, preparing for a second wave of attacks. Their formation was efficient but predictable. Marcus could see 12 different ways to neutralize their entire force without firing a single shot. The thought should have disturbed him. Marcus had never been a violent person, and the idea of military strategy had always seemed abstract and distant. Yet now he was thinking like a warrior, and it felt as natural as breathing. "Signal all civilian vessels to maintain defensive positions," Marcus ordered, "and begin implementing Protocol 7. "Sir," Commander Park said hesitantly, "there is no Protocol 7 in our operational manual." Marcus smiled, and his expression carried the same mysterious quality that was appearing on human faces throughout the galaxy. "Check the sealed archives, Commander. Authorization code. Compassion override." Commander Park's fingers moved across her console, accessing files that had been locked for 3 millennia. Her eyes widened as she read the protocols that appeared on her screen. "Captain, these are military strategies I've never seen before. They're incredibly sophisticated, but they're also designed to minimize enemy casualties while achieving complete victory. Implement them," Marcus said simply. Across human space, similar scenes were playing out. Civilian ships were accessing sealed military protocols. Ordinary citizens were building defensive systems with knowledge they didn't remember learning. Children were creating complex strategic plans with the casual ease of playing games. President Sarah Mitchell walked into the diplomatic summit with the same calm smile she had worn since the crisis began. The meeting was being held on Neutral Station, a space platform that had been used for interspecies negotiations for over 1,000 years. Ambassador Zektar of the Krethek Empire was waiting for her, along with representatives from a dozen other species who had come to witness what they expected to be humanity's surrender. The Krethek leader was nearly 8 feet tall, his crystalline armor gleaming under the station's lights. His 4 arms were crossed in a gesture of disdain. "President Mitchell," Zektar began, his voice carrying the authority of a conqueror, "you have requested this meeting to discuss the terms of your surrender. We are prepared to be merciful if you acknowledge that humanity has grown too weak to deserve their current territories." Sarah took her seat at the negotiation table, her movements graceful and unhurried. Around the room, the other species representatives watched with curiosity. The Velani, who resembled large cats, sat with their ears flicked forward in interest. The aquatic hydrants observed from their water-filled environmental suits, their tentacles moving in patterns that suggested amusement. "Ambassador Zektar," Sarah replied, "I appreciate your concern for humanity's well-being, but I believe there's been a misunderstanding. We haven't grown weak. We've simply chosen to be gentle." Zektar's crystalline features showed confusion. "Your colonies offered no resistance to our attacks. Your military made no aggressive moves against our forces. If this is not weakness, what is it?" Sarah's smile widened slightly. Restraint. She activated a holographic display that showed the current positions of all human and Krethek forces throughout the galaxy. The Krethek fleet was scattered across 17 systems, their ships confident in their dominance. The human forces appeared minimal, consisting mainly of civilian vessels, and small defense platforms. Ambassador, Sarah continued, you attacked 17 of our colonies, expecting us to respond with panic and chaos. Instead, we evacuated every single colonist without a single casualty. You deployed your entire battle fleet, expecting us to meet you with force. Instead, we chose to invite you to dinner. Zektar's confidence began to waver. What are you saying? I'm saying that you've made a fundamental error in your assessment of human nature. You believe that our peaceful behavior over the past 3 millennia indicates weakness. In reality, it indicates choice. Sarah touched another control, and the holographic display changed. Now it showed the locations of defense systems that had been hidden throughout human space, weapons platforms that had been dormant for 3,000 years, and strategic positions that could control every major trade route in the galaxy. The Compassion Protocol has been active for 3,000 years, Sarah explained. It's the system we created to ensure that we would never again unleash our full potential on the galaxy. But you've triggered the override conditions. Zektar stood up, his 4 arms now spread in a gesture of alarm. What override conditions? Zektar stood up, his 4 arms now spread in a gesture of alarm. What override conditions? Direct attacks on human colonies with intent to exterminate, systematic destruction of civilian populations, violation of the 3,000-year peace treaty. Sarah's voice remained calm, but there was something in her eyes that made every representative in the room feel a chill. You've convinced our automated systems that humanity faces extinction. The Compassion Protocol is no longer in effect. The holographic display updated again, showing the true scope of human military capability. Hidden shipyards were producing vessels with technology that was millennia ahead of anything the galaxy had seen. Civilian installations were revealing themselves to be defensive platforms that could protect entire star systems. Most disturbing of all, the human civilian ships that had been conducting evacuations were now displaying weapon signatures that exceeded the firepower of the entire Krethak fleet. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched from the orbital research station as the galaxy's perception of humanity shifted in real time. The research station itself had undergone a transformation, its scientific equipment reconfiguring into sensor arrays that could track every ship movement within 100 light-years. Dr. Vasquez, Lieutenant Torres reported, we're receiving surrender requests from the Krethak fleet. All 17 battle groups are requesting permission to withdraw. Elena nodded, her attention focused on the data streams that were now flowing through the station's enhanced systems. The Compassion Protocol hadn't just hidden humanity's military capabilities, it had also suppressed their ability to process information at the speeds necessary for galactic warfare. Now that the protocol was deactivated, humans were thinking and reacting faster than they had in 3 millennia. What are our orders? Torres asked. Elena smiled, and her expression carried both kindness and absolute certainty. We accept their surrender, but we also make sure they understand why the peace lasted so long. Ambassador Zektar was studying the tactical displays with growing horror. The Krethak had committed their entire military to the attack on humanity, confident that they were facing a weak and passive species. Now they were discovering that they had challenged the galaxy's apex predator while it was choosing to sleep. How long? Zektar asked quietly. How long have you been capable of this? President Sarah Mitchell's smile was both sad and proud. Since before your species developed spaceflight. We've been choosing to be gentle for 3,000 years, Ambassador. We've been choosing to smile instead of bare our teeth. The room was silent as the implications sank in. Every species in the galaxy had assumed that humanity's peaceful nature was a sign of evolutionary weakness. In reality, it had been a conscious choice made by a species that had proven itself too dangerous to remain fully active. What happens now? Asked the Villani representative, her cat-like features showing genuine concern. Sarah turned to address the entire room. Now we have a choice. We can return to the old ways, where humanity's full potential was locked away for the safety of all. Or we can forge a new path, where our capabilities are known but controlled through mutual respect and understanding. She looked directly at Sektar. The Krethek Empire has learned something important today. Humanity's gentleness isn't weakness. It's strength under control. Our smiles aren't signs of naivety. They're signs of confidence in our ability to choose peace over war. Sektar slowly lowered his forearms, his crystalline armor seeming to dim with the weight of understanding. What do you require of us? Acknowledgement, Sarah replied simply. Acknowledgement that the peace treaty was not a sign of weakness but a gift. Acknowledgement that humanity chooses to be gentle because we can afford to be. And most importantly, acknowledgement that this choice will continue as long as it is respected. The diplomatic summit ended with the renewal of the peace treaty, but the terms were different now. The galaxy understood that humanity's peaceful nature came from strength, not weakness. The Compassion Protocol was modified to allow for greater transparency about human capabilities while maintaining the species' commitment to peace. Dr. James Park sealed the archives with a new understanding of his species' history. The Silent War had taught humanity that unlimited power required unlimited responsibility. The Compassion Protocol hadn't been a weakness, it had been wisdom. Captain Marcus Chen returned to his patrols with his ship's true capabilities no longer hidden. The Harmony was revealed to be one of the most advanced vessels in the galaxy, capable of protecting entire star systems, while maintaining its primary mission of exploration and rescue. As the crisis ended, humans across the galaxy continued to smile. But now the galaxy understood what those smiles meant. They weren't signs of weakness or naivety. They were signs of a species that had looked into the abyss of its own potential and chosen to be better. The gentle storm had passed, leaving the galaxy more peaceful than it had been in millennia. And humanity continued to choose kindness, knowing that their choice was respected not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to be gentle.